Thank you for joining me on Legislative Update. I'm Dan Kristiansen, your 39th District State Representative. One of the most basic and essential functions of government is the protection and safety of the citizens that we serve. I'm a longtime advocate of strong public safety laws in our state, and I'm proud that Washington is a state of firsts when it comes to public safety. We were the first in the nation to adopt a sex offender registration law and to provide indefinite civil commitment for the state's most dangerous predators. We were the first to adopt a 3 strikes you're out law that puts violent criminals away for life without parole after committing their 3rd serious felony. And our state cracked down with hard time for armed crime with stiffer penalties for people who committed crimes using a gun or knife. This year in the legislature, as the budget deficit of $8 billion plus has dominated the discussion, we need to keep public safety in the forefront. Unfortunately, there are some here in Olympia who think we should cut corners to save money. That includes the early release of prisoners, including convicted felons, some serving only 50% of their sentences. It also includes eliminating more than 200 community corrections officers. These are the folks who supervise those folks who have been released. So now under this plan, not only would we have prisoners released early into our communities, they would essentially come with little or no supervision, when it comes to protecting us after they've been let out. That puts our communities and families, also our children, at risk. The governor's proposed budget would reduce correctional officers within our state prison system, including the Monroe Correctional Complex right here at home. That's also a big mistake and puts remaining corrections officers at risk. Another proposal that's also very disturbing: current law allows voting rights of released felons to be restored only if they have completed court requirements and fully paid their restitution. House Bill 1517 would remove the requirement that felons pay their court-ordered restitution before their voting rights are restored. I disagree with this approach because it places the interests of criminals higher than those of the victims. During floor debate, supporters of the bill said people make mistakes, and I agree, and we should offer redemption. We're talking about convicted felons here, though. People such as arsonists, murderers, child abusers and rapists, burglars and kidnappers, just to name a few. Redemption should not mean letting felons off the hook. Part of redemption should also be paying restitution. I spoke on the House floor about how this bill ignores justice for the victims. A family is impacted terribly by some of these heinous crimes that take place. And I'm sorry, with respect to the sponsor of this, justice for all. What about the person who was hurt? What about the family that was hurt? What about the victim? We're not talking about that in this piece of legislation here. That person who committed this crime gave up those rights, as was mentioned earlier by the gentleman from the 12th District. And if we're not going to stand behind our judiciary system and uphold the laws that we as lawmakers are making down here, if we're not going to make sure that those folks spend however much time the judiciary system decides to put them away for, and the fines, whatever it is that they're supposed to be doing as far as payback to society for the crimes that they've done, it incenses me that we're, as lawmakers, we're essentially going back on what our job is. We need to put the interests of victims and families first, before felons, and we need to hold criminals accountable for their actions. The tragic kidnapping and death of 12-year-old Zena Linick just 2 years ago in Tacoma at the hands of a convicted sex offender who got lost in the system, this underscores the need for greater accountability. That's why I co-sponsored a bill to provide real-time GPS monitoring of convicted Level 3 sex offenders and those sex offenders who are homeless or have failed to register. We have the technology to keep track of these offenders. Think of it this way. If you can pay $10 a month more on your cell phone bill just to keep track of your child's whereabouts, then why can't we have real-time monitoring of convicted sex offenders? That's the direction we should be going to ensure public safety. Unfortunately, House Bill 1834 never even got a hearing despite our repeated requests. Fortunately, we have scored a few victories in this session for public safety. The House Public Safety and Emergency Preparedness Committee approved a bill that would provide review and sentencing guidelines for child abusers. The measure, House Bill 2279, is also known as Eric's Law. It was named after little 3-year-old Eric Woodruff. He's of Lake Stevens, who was nearly beaten to death by a family friend and now has permanent brain damage. We did just pass this bill off the House floor this last week, and it now is before the Senate for consideration. The House has also approved a bill I co-sponsored that provides greater oversight of convicted sex offenders who are on the internet. House Bill 2035 would require registered sex and kidnapping offenders to report electronic mail address information and their internet identification information upon request by law enforcement. That would also include any website addresses created or operated by the offender. Many young people use social networking, websites, such as MySpace and Facebook. This measure would better protect them from sex predators who talk to their victims on these sites. These are some of the things we can do to keep Washington first in protecting the public. Our state has a great record toward keeping our communities and our families safe. Let's not turn back the clock toward more hug-a-thug programs while victims remain forgotten. As budget negotiations continue, let's make sure public safety remains one of our highest priorities. After all, it is one of the most basic and necessary functions of government. I welcome your comments and thank you so much for joining me here on Legislative Update. I'm your State Representative, Dan Kristiansen.